one of the most powerful companies on earth, came to South Africa's wild coast and was told, no, nia, aribatli, arinyaki, not by parliament, not by a minister, by a fishing community that took the matter to the Constitutional Court and won. After 5 years, against a company worth more than South Africa's entire annual budget. Here's the thread that runs through all of these 5. Power, corporate power, political power, institutional power, does not give up its positions willingly in this country. It files court papers, it issues decrees, it produces medical certificates, it sues regulators, it buys party votes in clinic rooms, it exploits the gap between what a law says and what can actually be enforced. And the people who are supposed to stop it, the regulators, the commissioners, the opposition parties, the oversight committees, are outgunned, under-resourced, or in some cases, part of the problem itself. But here's what Friday's Constitutional Court judgment reminded us. The people of the Wild Coast, with no 4 trillion balance sheet, no army of senior counsel, no political connections, went to court and they won. They held the line for 5 years against Shell, and the court backed them. You see, that matters because it means the system still works, sometimes when someone refuses to let it not work. South Africa's crisis is not that the tools are broken. It's that too many people with power have figured out how to avoid being touched by them. How's it, everybody? Welcome to Be Frank with Mac. You know how it is here. We tell it as it is. We tell nothing but the truth. No holds barred. We give it to you as it is. So this is what has happened in South Africa over the past weekend. This is a big story. This is one I feel that we should really keep our eyes on, especially for you and I that deal with data and constantly are on the internet and want to know how much it's costing us, because it is costing us a lot of money. So, on the 11th of August, ICASA Councillor Dikeledi Catherine Mushi sat before Parliament's Portfolio Committee on Communications. She dropped a bombshell. She said the regulator had noticed a pattern, suggesting possible collusion between Vodacom and MTN. Their products look almost the same. They're affected by the new data rules in almost the same way. Why? She asked, do two competitors behave identically? Parliament perked up. I perked up. We should all perk up. Let's perk up. Journalists wrote it down. South Africa's Twitter community went appropriately mad. We lost it, right? 3 days later, then ICASA came back, issued a statement. It said the word collusion was retracted. It said the authority had conducted no market assessment, no investigation, no evidentiary basis whatsoever for the claim. So hold on. Let me give it to you as it is. Every time you buy data, they say it expires. And then when a new month comes in, you have to buy data again, whether that one is finished or not. It happens with MTN. It happens with Vodacom. What evidence do they need? So let me summarize this for you. South Africa's communications regulator accused the country's 2 largest mobile networks of possible collusion before Parliament. Then they went back on the word, admitted it had done absolutely no work to support that claim. Ask us people that buy data. We will tell you. And then in the same week, this is ICASA, the body that is supposed to regulate the telecom sector with precision and authority. Now, here's the actual story underneath the embarrassment. In January 2026, ICASA gazetted new regulations requiring Vodacom and MTN to automatically roll over unused data bundles at least once. No more data expiring on the 31st while you watch helplessly. The rules were due to take effect in January 2027. Both operators sued. They say the regulations are vague, difficult to implement, and could disrupt their business models. That's exactly what Vodacom and MTN are saying. They want to chow our money, and government is disturbing them. Anyway, the EFF, to its credit, called that out directly. Data does not expire. It does not rot. It doesn't perish like it's food. So there's no rational or moral justification for telecommunications companies to confiscate data that our struggling people have already paid for, simply because a date printed in a system has been reached. The FF is not wrong on this one, guys. South Africans have been losing purchase data to artificial expiry dates for years. ICASA finally made a rule. The network sued to kill it. So ideally, us, your customers, the people that are supporting you, that are making your business grow, you're the ones that want to screw us. And we must sit down and say, it's fine. And then when government tries to fight for us, you say, no, you want to sue them. And it's try like I've been in. ICASA then fumbled in its own defense in Parliament. Hey, ICASA, hey, government and scoring own goals. The data you buy with your hard-earned money disappears on a calendar date that you had no say in it. That is the story. The collusion claim was a sideshow, a very poorly managed sideshow. So we, as the people, must call Thibaut Touch again and say, data must fall, because this, for me, is bullshit. We pay the money, let us use it until it finishes, because we are going to keep buying it. Why the greed? Fotzek, man. Anyway, let's look at Sulaiman Karim, who was geolocated at a restaurant, but he's still too ill. He can't testify, but he can go to restaurants. Because, restaurants are much safer than hospitals. I don't know. The Madlanga Commission continues to be the most entertaining courtroom in the country. And not in a good way. Sulaiman Karim, Northwest businessman. He has been attempting to avoid testifying at this commission for most of 2026. Medical certificates, hospitalizations, a legal battle over whether he should testify in camera. The commission at one point ordered an independent medical assessment because the certificate he was submitting were, in Justice Madlanga's words, useless. Useless. You know how useless? As useless as, all those letters in the word Q. They could have just put the letter. All those U, E, what, unnecessary. Sulaiman Karim's sick note. Anyway, July brought a new chapter. Karim's legal team applied for an indefinite postponement on medical grounds. The commission's evidence leaders pushed back. They presented geolocation data showing that Karim had been spending up to 8 hours a day outside his medical facility. 8 hours outside per day. Too ill to testify, very much not too ill to leave. The commission reserved its ruling and then, on the 29th of July, ordered Karim to testify in person. His team proposed the 14th of August as the date. Now, who is Sulaiman Karim and why does any of this matter? Kimandi man. He's accused of lending alleged underworld kingpin Vusimezi Kat Matlala 10 million rand to service an SAPS tender that has since been cancelled. Matlala is one of the central figures in the Commission's investigation into drug cartel infiltration of the criminal justice system. Now, Karim is not accused of a parking fine. Didn't park badly or park in the wrong spot. He is accused of financially backing an alleged underworld figure who was servicing police contracts. That's Sulaiman Karim, geolocation guy. Yeah, maybe we must sing him that song. Send me your location and... Sulaiman, they're coming for you, my brother. He has spent 8 months finding reasons not to sit in that chair and answer questions about it. The commission has now ordered him to appear. We will see if he makes it. Zimzalabim. Bah! Sulaiman Karim.
We've also roped in Dr. Shadi Makhanwe, who's a senior lecturer at Wits School of Law. Dr. Makhanwe, good to have you on the program this afternoon. So the Commission has now directed that a criminal charge be laid against Sulaiman Karim for failing to comply with its directives. From a legal perspective, how serious is this development?
Good afternoon. I think it's very serious because what happened today it basically means that the commission has essentially drawn a line under Karim's participation when it comes to the commission. So the commission gave him another opportunity to justify why he could not appear, but it had specifically required an independent medical assessment. Instead, his lawyer submitted another report from his treating doctor, which is basically not what the court not what the commission had required. So the commission said it was not enough because it wanted an independent assessment of whether Karim was actually unable to attend the commission. So the commission has now referred the matter for criminal processes. That doesn't mean that Karim is being found guilty of anything, but the relevant authorities must investigate and then decide whether to prosecute him or not. I think the important point is that the commission is no longer going to wait for him. It will proceed with the evidence that it already has and then continue to make its findings.
Yeah, but what offense could Karim potentially face, and what would prosecutors have to prove to secure a conviction here?
I think let's start first with whether there's a possibility of prison in that sense. It's possible, but it's not automatic. So the Commission's Act makes certain failures to comply with the Commission's lawful requirements on offense, and that is the reason why the Commission has basically referred the matter for further investigation or for criminal investigation. So if Karim is prosecuted or convicted and then sentenced, it could probably lead to possible imprisonment. But I think we shouldn't say that he's going to go to jail because there's still a criminal process that he has to go through.
Might work. Anyway, another story, and this is one that should depress most of us as South Africans. 33.6% unemployment, and the number behind that number. Now, Stats SA released the Q2 2026 Quarterly Labour Force Survey, and this happened on Tuesday. The headline: South Africa's official unemployment rate rose from 32.7% to 33.6%. That's 8.5 million people without work. 345,000 more than the last quarter.
South Africans continue to be mired in deep unemployment. Stats SA data shows that the unemployment rate rose to 33.6%. That's between the months of April and June, already referred to as the second quarter. According to Stats SA, there were a net 16,000 few jobs in the period. The largest decreases in employment were recorded in community services and social services, showing a decline in jobs in the government sector, with constructions jobs also being lost, as well as transport. Private households also cut down on assistance in the home as people grapple with the cost of living. Meanwhile, the number of unemployed people rose by 345,000 in the period to 8.5 million. As always, it's the youth that continue to bear the brunt of high unemployment.
The economy didn't collapse. Employment only fell by 16,000. The problem is the 329,000 new people who entered the labor market and found nothing waiting for them. Now, the number that doesn't get enough attention: youth unemployment, 47.4%. That's 5 million young South Africans between 15 and 34. Half of them are unemployed. The Eastern Cape is at 47.5% overall. The Western Cape at 19.5% is the only province that looks like a different country. And then the number that should be on every government press release, but never is. When you include people who have given up looking for work entirely, the rate hits 46.3%. Almost half of South Africa's extended labor force is either unemployed or has stopped trying. The government will say, we are creating conditions for growth. Futek! The GNU has stabilized the grid. Inflation is under control. Investor confidence is improving. Ask any businessman, ask anyone that goes to those development finance institutions, whether it be the NEF or any other one of them, asking for money so that they can be able to create jobs, so they can start businesses, and let them hear what the story it is that they tell you. So government mustn't come here. They are not creating an environment for us to be able to create employment, because government's job is not there to create jobs. Government's job is there to create an environment that makes it easy for people to be able to get jobs or start businesses. So that bullshit of them making things better, they can tell it to somebody else. Because all of that may be true. none of it puts food on the table this week for 8.5 million people. So baskatorjetsa sibon. South Africa's unemployment rate has been above 30% for 5 consecutive years. We have now generated a generation of young people who have never known a labor market that had room for them. That is not a statistic. That is a social emergency. 33.6%. Remember that number. Baba Nkiban. Here's the other ones. Duduzane is now deputy president, and Jacob Zuma issued a decree. On the 4th of August, Jacob Zuma issued a decree. Not a resolution passed at a conference, not a vote by any structure, a decree signed by the party president announcing that his son, Duduzane Zuma, was now the MK party's first deputy president. It's nice there by the Zumas. Papa just decides who's who in the zoo, because clearly it's a zoo. John Hlophe, who's the former Western Cape Judge President, a man who survived his own ethics saga to become MK's party parliamentary leader, was removed from the deputy presidency with immediate effect. He keeps his seat in parliament though, but that number 2 job now belongs to Duduzane. Wana papa man. Manati, hey? Must be nice. Nepo baby. Also axed former police minister Gosnani Nhleko as national chairperson. Nhleko is the man who will forever be remembered for standing before Parliament in 2015 and explaining with great seriousness that the swimming pool at Nkandla was in fact a fire pool. South Africa. A firefighting asset, essential infrastructure. The ANC even admitted later it had lied to Parliament about this. Tony Yengeni is the new 2nd deputy president. Reverend Mkolusi Phakathi is the new national chairperson. Duduzane's twin sister, Duduzile Zuma Sambudla, was expelled from the party in June. The family went from 2 siblings in the tent to 1 son elevated to number 2, all by decree. It's nice. We still live in like prehistoric times. Things are done by decree. If the king has spoken, so the subjects must agree. So let's count the MK leadership changes since the party launched in late 2023. Floyd Shivambu joined as national convener, became secretary general, was removed in June 2025 after allegations he visited fugitive pastor Shepherd Bushiri in Malawi. He went on to found Africa Maibuye. His alleged crime, meeting a fugitive pastor. I mean, he could have just been at home and made his own pasta. He didn't have to go to Malawi. Wrong pasta. Excuse. Jacob Zuma went and met AJ Gupta, wanted by South African authorities, currently living freely in Dubai, at a temple in India. No internal consequences whatsoever. It's okay. Baba can do whatever the hell he wants. I mean, it's not like the Guptas didn't steal money from the country and they are on a criminal watch list. It's okay. The president can go. But if you go and make pasta in Malawi, go visit the pasta in Malawi, then it's fine. That's how it works in the MK party. That's how it works. You, the constituent of MK party. Sharp guys. That double standard is not subtle. Shivambu gets removed for meeting a fugitive preacher. Zuma gets a presidential decree for his son. MK has now had more leadership reshuffles than most parties have had election campaigns. Every day we shuffle in a shuffle. They shuffle. Not did MK. Yeah, it's not a... That's why it's a party. They're shuffling. The party goes to November's local government elections, which will be its first real electoral test at municipal level. The brand new number 2 has never held elected office, installed by his father 89 days before voting day. Whether the voters in KwaZulu-Natal care about any of this is a genuinely open question. The party won 14.6% of the national vote in 2024. It may yet be the 3rd largest party in local government. Dynasties have survived worse optics. And maybe they'll give a decree and see where the decree gets them in the upcoming local elections. But anyway, Kipatialona, not ours. So Shell loses, the Wild Coast wins. 4 trillion hits a wall. Big number. Remember we spoke about unemployment? Okay. On Friday, the Constitutional Court delivered a judgment that ended a 5-year legal fight and sent a message to the energy industry that is worth paying attention to. Shell, one of the largest companies on earth, valued at over 4 trillion rand, it wanted to conduct seismic oil exploration off South Africa's Wild Coast, one of the most ecologically sensitive and culturally significant stretches of coastline on the continent. The Amadiba Crisis Committee, representing communities along that coast, said no. Fishing communities, whose livelihoods depend on those waters, said no. Environmental groups said no. They said the consultation process before the exploration right was granted was inadequate, that their rights had not been properly considered. The case went all the way to the top. And on Friday, the Constitutional Court ruled that Shell will not be allowed to renew its exploration right. The right has expired. It didn't really expire. Hopefully, data expire. So, Shell, things expire in this country and it cannot be revived.
The Constitutional Court has ruled that Shell's offshore exploration cannot proceed off South Africa's Wild Coast. The ruling is a setback for the oil major after years of legal challenges that affected communities and environmental groups brought. The highest court in the land has overturned a 2024 judgment of the Supreme Court of Appeal, which provided a lifeline to oil companies exploring off the country's coast.
As a result, the court makes the following order. In case CCT 194/24, sustaining the Wild Coast NPC and others versus the Minister of Mineral Resources and Energy and others, on application for leave to appeal from the Supreme Court of Appeal, hearing an appeal from the full court of the High Court of South Africa, Eastern Cape Division, Makanda. 1. Leave to appeal is granted. 2. The appeal is upheld. 3. The order of the Supreme Court of Appeal is set aside and replaced with the following, quote, the appeal is dismissed with cost, including the cost of 2 counsel, to be paid jointly and severally by the appellants, close quote. 4. The first to the fifth respondents jointly and severally must pay the applicant's cost in this court. 5. Each party must bear its own cost in relation to the application insofar as it relates to the Supreme Court of Appeal's failure to determine the applicant's cross-appeal in that court. 6. Each party must bear its own cost in relation to the application in this court in terms of Rule 20. In case CCT 196/24, Natural Justice and another versus the Minister of Mineral Resources and Energy and others, on application for leave to appeal from the Supreme Court of Appeal, hearing an appeal from the full court of the High Court of South Africa, Eastern Cape Division, Makanda. 1. Leave to appeal is granted. 2. The appeal is upheld. 3. The order of the Supreme Court of Appeal is set aside and replaced with the following order. The appeal is dismissed with cost, including cost of 2 counsel, to be paid jointly and severally by the appellants. 4. The first to the fourth respondents jointly and severally must pay the applicant's cost in this court. 5. Each party must bear their own cost in relation to the application, insofar as it relates to the Supreme Court of Appeal's failure to determine the applicant's cross-appeal in that court. 6. Each party must bear its own costs in relation to the application in terms of Rule 20. Judgment is handed down.
Anyway, Shell's parent company said it respects the court's ruling and it will comply, which is the correct thing to say when the highest court in the country has just told you it's over. This is not a straightforward story about good versus evil. South Africa has an energy crisis. We need new supply. Offshore gas and oil exploration is part of the conversation about long-term energy security. The government's own policy supports upstream oil and gas development, but the court said something very important. The support for energy development does not override the constitutional rights of communities to meaningful consultation. That a company with a 4 trillion rand valuation does not get to decide on behalf of fishing villages that the economic benefit of exploration outweighs the risk to their way of life. The Wild Coast has been fought over before. Toll roads, mining rights, development projects. The communities there have won some of those fights. They've won this one too. Shell can explore elsewhere. The Wild Coast is not for sale. So these are the 5 big stories that we've looked at here on Be Frank with Mac. Let me tell you what they're all actually about. Number 1, doing a recap here. CASA stood up in Parliament and accused 2 of the most powerful corporations in the country of collusion without doing a single day's work to back it up. A regulator whose entire job is to speak with authority about the industry it oversees, speaking without authority. Because in South Africa, the institutions meant to hold power to account have a habit of performing accountability without actually doing any accountability. Another one. Sulaiman Karim has been medically unable to testify at a commission of inquiry for most of this year. Geolocation data places him 8 hours outside his medical facility every day. He's not the only one. We have watched the Madlanga Commission summon witness after witness, officials, businessmen, intelligence figures, and we watch them produce sick notes, postponements, and legal arguments while the country waits for answers about how a drug cartel bought its way into the justice and police system. Now, the pattern is the same every time. Not innocent, not guilty. Just unavailable, The busy man. 8.5 million South Africans are unemployed. 5 million of them are young people who have never known a labor market with room for them. The GNU says it's fixing the grid, managing the rand, courting investors. All of that matters, but none of it feeds the 8.5 million this week. And at some point, a country has to reckon with the fact that economic stability at the top and complete economic exclusion at the bottom are not 2 separate problems. They are the same problem seen from very different flaws. Jacob Zuma appointed his son by decree, not by conference, not by vote, by decree, in a party that already expelled his daughter, in a party that fired Floyd Shivambu for visiting a fugitive pastor in Malawi, while Zuma himself stood at a temple in India next to AJ Gupta, South Africa's most wanted man, and faced no consequences at all. Now, the MK party goes into November elections not with a mandate or a vision, but with a bloodline. The question for the voters of KwaZulu-Natal is whether they notice this difference. And finally, Shell. 4 trillion, one of the most powerful companies on earth, came to South Africa's Wild Coast and was told, no, nia, arbatli, arnyaki. Not by Parliament, not by a minister, by a fishing community that took the matter to the Constitutional Court and won. After 5 years, against a company worth more than South Africa's entire annual budget. Here's the thread that runs through all of these 5. Power, corporate power, political power, institutional power, does not give up its positions willingly in this country. It files court papers, it issues decrees, it produces medical certificates, it sues regulators, it buys party votes in clinic rooms, it exploits the gap between what a law says and what can actually be enforced. And the people who are supposed to stop it, the regulators, the commissioners, the opposition parties, the oversight committees, are outgunned, under-resourced, or in some cases, part of the problem itself. But here's what Friday's Constitutional Court judgment reminded us. The people of the Wild Coast, with no 4 trillion balance sheet, no army of senior counsel, no political connections, went to court and they won. They held the line for 5 years against Shell, and the court backed them. You see, that matters because it means the system still works, sometimes when someone refuses to let it not work. South Africa's crisis is not that the tools are broken. It's that too many people with power have figured out how to avoid being touched by them. The ICASA story, the Karim story, the Zuma decree, the unemployment number, they are all versions of the same truth. The Wild Coast story is the other version, the one where the tools worked, where the community held on long enough for the system to finally catch up. That's the choice this country keeps making, week by week. The question is, which version are we going to be? Let's be frank.